Welcome aboard this floating nightmare, gentlemen. Tonight we're descending into a world of claustrophobic darkness, where steel walls press closer with each breath, and the air hangs thick with the stench of human misery. Picture this. You're squeezing through a narrow hatch, boots slipping on oil-slicked metal rungs, and before your feet even touch the deck, the smell hits you like a physical blow. That distinctive cocktail of diesel fumes, unwashed bodies, and machine grease, so potent you can taste it on your tongue. This isn't a ship. It's a pressurized metal coffin stuffed with torpedoes and 30 men who haven't seen soap in weeks. Welcome to life aboard a German U-boat. Statistically speaking, you probably won't survive the experience. Before we dive deeper into this olfactory hellscape, hit that like button if you're enjoying this descent into maritime misery. Subscribe too, but only if you genuinely appreciate content that makes you grateful for your boring, landlocked existence. Drop a comment about where you're watching from and what godforsaken hour it is there. I'm always fascinated how far these stories of underwater suffering reach. Now dim your lights. Maybe turn on a fan for some authentic engine hum ambience. And let's take this nightmare cruise together. That first moment when the hatch clangs shut above you becomes permanently seared into your memory. It's not the darkness that registers first, nor the coffin-like narrowness of the passageways. It's the smell. An unholy mixture of diesel exhaust, rancid body odor, industrial lubricants, and something suspiciously reminiscent of decomposing onions. And here's the cruel twist. It doesn't fade. The stench grows more potent the deeper you venture into this metal labyrinth. Breathing through your mouth doesn't help. Nothing helps. The passageways are so narrow your shoulders scrape both walls simultaneously. Overhead, a jungle of pipes runs through the boat's spine, warm to the touch and often leaking mysterious fluids. You sidestep past a torpedo bolted to the wall like some silent, deadly passenger. Every square inch of space serves triple duty, crammed with wiring, valves, sacks of potatoes swinging from hooks, and of course men. So many men. You pass a sailor slumped by a hatch, his shirt soaked through with sweat, forehead pressed against the bulkhead like it's the only cool surface in this floating sauna. He doesn't even glance your way. Nobody does. You're the fresh meat here, the new guy. And in this underwater tin can, that status earns you exactly zero sympathy. Your sleeping quarters? Oh, you'll love this. A narrow shelf laughingly called a bunk, wedged precariously above live torpedoes. No privacy curtain. No mattress worth the name. Just a thin, stained pad and an aroma you'll eventually stop noticing. They call it hot bunking, which sounds vaguely exciting until you learn the truth. You'll be sharing this glorified shelf with two other guys in rotating shifts. When you finally crawl in, the space will still be warm from the last occupant's body heat. Possibly damp. If he had the flu? Congratulations, you've just enlisted in the same microscopic war. There's a storage compartment beneath your bunk. Don't get excited. It's packed with sausages, ammunition, and spare parts. Your personal belongings? They'll stay in your bag, which will live under someone else's feet. Nothing you own will ever be clean again in this environment. Even sitting becomes a luxury in this space-starved world. Every corner, every flat surface gets claimed. Some guys sleep curled like cats between torpedoes. Others master the art of napping upright in the control room. One officer swears he sleeps standing up, wedged between the radio console and a steam pipe. After seeing the alternative, you're inclined to believe him. The ceiling hangs so low you'll develop a permanent hunch, banging your head every 15 minutes without fail. There's one particular pipe at exactly forehead level that every crewman hits at least once. You'll develop a newfound appreciation for helmets, even though you weren't issued one. Just wait until your first emergency dive. That pipe becomes intimately acquainted with your skull at 20 knots. No windows, obviously. No natural light whatsoever. The only illumination comes from flickering red lamps and the occasional flashlight beam sweeping across faces like a scene from a haunted submarine movie. Your circadian rhythms abandon ship within hours. Morning, night, doesn't matter. Time here gets measured in watch rotations, meal cycles, and the blood-curdling scream of the dive alarm. You attempt the futile ritual of unpacking. A toothbrush, spare shirt, letters from home, that tin of foot powder some veteran told you to bring. You'll come to worship that powder like it's the Holy Grail. Somewhere behind you, a sailor releases gas with abandon. Nobody reacts. The smell simply joins the existing atmospheric cocktail. One guy offers you a cup of suspicious black liquid that might be coffee or possibly engine coolant. Hard to tell. You drink it anyway out of politeness. He nods once with hollow eyes before disappearing down the passageway like a man marching to the gallows. Later, you learn he's been underwater for 32 consecutive days. You stop drinking the coffee. Historians still debate whether the physical discomfort or psychological torment was worse aboard U-boats. From your current position, bent double in a humid metal tube surrounded by snoring, farting crewmates, and leaking valves, it's too close to call. The thud of boots overhead signals you're still surfaced, which means you're visible to enemy aircraft. Part of you hopes for a dive, but not too soon. The deeper you go, the hotter it gets. The air turns viscous. The boat sweats like a feverish patient, and every sound transforms into a potential death sentence. The U-boat itself stretches only about 200 feet. Imagine trying to live, fight, sleep, eat, and breathe inside a subway car crammed with boilers, torpedoes, and 48 stressed-out German sailors. Now subtract any concept of personal space. Add mildew. Shake vigorously. Your once crisp uniform now clings in all the wrong places. Your boots never dry. Your socks develop their own ecosystem. You idly wonder if human skin can grow mold. Someone says yes. You don't ask how they know. And this is only your first day. The officers fare slightly better. They get bunks with privacy curtains, sometimes even functioning light bulbs. They share a cramped room that smells faintly of cigarettes and old maps. Don't envy them, though. They're the ones making impossible decisions. Like who gets fresh air during the next surfacing? Who gets sealed in the engine room if it floods? Command brings its own special hell. You finally collapse into your bunk, or attempt to. The ceiling sits 6 inches from your nose. It's warm. Too warm. You shift. Something creaks ominously. A fat drop of condensation plops directly into your eye. You close them anyway. That's when the klaxon screams to life. Red lights strobe. Someone shouts. Boots pound on metal. You smack your head on that damned pipe. Again, as you scramble into action. The boat plunges downward violently. Your ears pop. The hull groans in protest. Welcome to U-boat life. Nobody promised comfort, but they definitely undersold the smell. You're starting to adjust, or more accurately, you've stopped gagging with every breath. That's progress. The stench aboard a U-boat isn't just bad. It's complex, layered. You could write an entire novel about it. A tragic, greasy epic with notes of rotting onion. It begins with the diesel, that heavy, clinging petroleum smell that infiltrates your skin, hair, even your thoughts. After a few days, you don't just smell it, you exude it. Your sweat, your breath, even your socks take on that sweet, toxic tang. At first it's revolting, then perversely comforting. Like some industrial cologne, eau de mass skin and realm. Then there's the food situation, or more accurately, what's left of it. The first week, traces of fresh bread and sausage still linger in the galley. You might spot an actual tomato if you're lucky. This golden age doesn't last. The boat's humidity shows no mercy. Bread grows mold within days. Vegetables liquefy. The sausages? You'll still be eating them weeks later, now with an unsettling sheen. Then begins the era of canned everything. Tinned cheese, tinned mystery meat, tinned regret. Underlying it all, the persistent ghost of boiled cabbage. Not because you're still eating cabbage, simply because the smell has chemically bonded with the very steel of the hull. The crew's collective body odor deserves its own chapter. Constant sweating turns the air into a broth of human essence. The recycled atmosphere grows so thick you feel like you're drinking it through your lungs. Water rationing means no showers. Those are reserved for chemical decontamination emergencies. Brushing teeth becomes optional. Shaving, only if you enjoy performing facial surgery in a pitching metal box. By day 5, your skin develops a permanent oily film. You scratch without realizing. Your uniform chafes. And your socks. Let's not discuss the socks. Some sailors rotate them like fine cheeses. Others surrender and go barefoot. Foot fungus isn't theoretical here. It's something you can smell through closed doors. This floating olfactory nightmare isn't unique to you. Every man develops his own distinctive aura. You learn to identify crewmates by scent alone. Ah, that's Klaus. Smells like pickled herring and poor life choices. The leather jackets become infamous scent traps. Sailors claim the coats are alive, and not in a poetic way. Historians still debate whether some jackets should have received burials at sea out of mercy. Then we have the more delicate biological realities. Let's not pretend 50 men in a steel tube maintain discretion. Flatulence transitions from social faux pas to communal language. You stop noticing after the first week. Eventually, you start ranking them. The head, the toilet, is another olfactory antagonist, but we'll get to that in detail later. For now, just know this, it's right next to the galley. That's right, your food is prepared a few feet from where 50 men perform their biological betrayals. Odor control? Practically non-existent. There's a single wheezing fan mounted near the periscope that accomplishes nothing except redistributing stench from one end of the boat to the other like some cruel, humid game of hot potato. Some sailors hang alcohol-soaked rags as makeshift air fresheners. Others light matches in desperation. A few bold souls deploy open mustard tins as chemical weapons against the funk, warfare on their own terms. One particularly inventive crewman ties a lemon peel around his neck like a scented amulet. It rots within 3 days. Now he just smells like citrus-infused regret. Occasionally, when morale hits rock bottom, someone cracks open a tin of preserved peaches. For one fleeting moment, sweetness floods the compartment and the air almost tastes like summer. Then someone belches and the illusion shatters. They say your nose eventually adjusts. That's a lie. What really happens is more sinister. You stop registering the smell, but it never leaves. It seeps into your clothes, your fingernails, your dreams. When you finally get shore leave, you'll walk into a room and watch heads turn, not because of your uniform, but because you reek like someone boiled a tire in vinegar. One U-boat captain claimed his men could be tracked by scent alone. You're starting to think he wasn't joking. And forget about romance. Returning crewmen were advised to bathe thoroughly, shave, and burn their uniforms before seeing their sweethearts. One sailor swore his dog ran from him when he came home. Another washed his hands 14 times and still couldn't remove the motor oil smell from his wedding band. During those marathon 60-day patrols, the U-boat stench becomes visible. A greasy film develops on the walls, a mixture of condensation, mildew, and distilled human suffering. You wipe it off with a rag. The rag then gets tossed overboard with ceremonial reverence, like banishing a cursed object. Only one moment offers respite, when the boat surfaces at night and the hatch opens. Cool, salty air cascades down the ladder like divine intervention. You gulp it down greedily, chest heaving, eyes watering. Some men stick their heads outside just to breathe, 5-10 minutes straight. Above, a velvet black sky scattered with stars. Wind, freedom, then the alarm sounds. You're diving again. The hatch slams shut, and the air changes. You can actually hear the transition from fresh to foul, like someone swapped champagne for lukewarm broth. Yet you endure, because that's what U-boat life demands. No comfort, no air fresheners, no clean linens, just metal walls, damp clothes, and the constant reminder that humans weren't meant to live like this. But somehow, you adapt. You learn to sniff, shrug, and sleep through it. Here, misery is part of the job description, and the smell of survival isn't a pleasant one. Privacy. What a beautiful concept. Like fresh sheets or warm buttered bread, luxuries that don't exist here. On a German U-boat, privacy is a myth, a fairy tale whispered about during surface runs. You won't find it. Not a shred. You wake up nose to armpit with a snoring stranger whose name you don't even know. Just that he smells like sour milk and axle grease. This is your bunk, a shelf roughly coffin width, stacked 3 high. Yours is the middle slot, meaning you inhale the breath of the guy above, while catching condensation drips from overhead pipes. Romantic. Hot bunking means 3 men share 2 bunks in rotating 6-hour shifts. When you slide into your assigned pad, it's still warm, often damp from the last occupant. No sheets, no pillow, just a threadbare wool blanket and the fading hope that the previous guy wasn't a drooler. There's an unspoken etiquette. No comments about smells, no excessive shifting, definitely no eye contact during bunk exchanges. Dressing becomes a synchronized dance of elbows and apologies. No changing rooms, no rooms at all. You learn to swap shirts while lying down or with arms pinned between lockers. Underwear? You'll rotate pairs until they develop sentience. Shaving happens before a postage stamp-sized mirror wedged between a periscope shaft and someone's laundry bag. You hear every bodily sound: coughs, flatulence, scratches. One guy has a chest cold, and you've memorized the rhythm of his phlegm. Another sleep mutters about potatoes and sinking. You don't ask. Even bathroom breaks become group activities. One toilet, 50 men. A tiny metal closet wedged between torpedoes and crew bunks. No lock. The door doesn't fully close. If someone walks in, you both pretend not to notice. Another rule: never forget to reset the flushing valves. More on that horror show later. Private conversations? Forget it. Every word is public. Even whispers carry in this steel tube. If you want to cry over a letter from home or confess your fears, you'll have an audience, silent but listening. One guy kept a journal. The crew called it his doom diary. It mysteriously vanished after a week. The torpedo room offers brief solitude if you're on watch at 0300 when others sleep. But you're sharing space with live warheads and dangling sausages. Not exactly a meditation retreat. Hard to be introspective when your foot's resting on a torpedo and a rat runs off with what might have been someone's toothbrush. Some sailors invent imaginary escapes. A log cabin in the Black Forest, a Swedish girlfriend in Stockholm. You nod politely and back away slowly. Physical contact becomes unavoidable. Constant bumping, shoulders, knees, backs, arms. At first you apologize. Then you stop. Eventually, the crew merges into one sweaty organism with 100 elbows and a communal toothbrush. You're not friends. You're furniture. Hygiene. There's a sink that spits cold water occasionally. Soap is rationed. Towels are mythical. No showers, even on surface runs. Water's for drinking and engines. You wipe down with rags, or, if you're fancy, a splash of cologne. Some men dab aftershave behind their ears like it helps. It doesn't. No escape. No fresh air breaks. No private corners. You're sealed in a steel capsule surrounded by crushing seawater. When one guy gets the flu, everyone gets it. When someone has a nightmare, you all wake up. When someone snores loud enough to wake the dead, you throw your boot at the wall and pray for silence. Historians debate whether this extreme lack of privacy contributed to psychological breakdowns. Some say humans need solitude to stay sane. Others argue it forged brutal camaraderie. You'll find out soon enough. Privacy isn't a luxury here. It's a fading memory. Even writing a letter home is public, hunched under flickering light while someone burps beside you and another shaves overhead. You sign with a smiley face like everything's fine. We're doing great down here. Smells like home. Officers aren't immune either. Sure, they get slightly bigger bunks and maybe a private locker. But their cabin barely fits 2 men shoulder to shoulder, constantly interrupted by crew, sonar reports, cooks hanging onions on their doorknob. Your commander hasn't had a private thought in weeks. He's developing an eye twitch. You try not to stare. Yet somehow, the crew adapts. You laugh at inappropriate things. Make dumb jokes. Turn bodily functions into competitions. Someone draws a face on a potato and names it Gunter. You salute it every morning. It becomes normal. You learn privacy isn't about being alone. It's about carving mental silence inside your crowded skull and camping there with a flashlight. You learn to breathe through your mouth, sleep through noise, and dream with your eyes open. Because here, surrounded by steel and steam and 50 other souls' sour breath, the only real privacy exists in your imagination. And even that's getting crowded. You're hungry. Again. But not the playful hunger from home where you daydream about schnitzel and cake before casually raiding the fridge. This is U-boat hunger, where your stomach knots like a rope and boiled potatoes look like gourmet cuisine. Welcome to the U-boat culinary experience, a slow descent from decent to barely edible. It starts deceptively well. First few days, the food's almost good. Real eggs, fresh bread, cold cuts, maybe even fruit if it's summer. The cook, some wiry guy with nicotine fingers and a permanent scowl, makes soups, stews, things resembling pancakes. But the pantry is a cruel mistress. No resupply, no real refrigeration. The boat's heat and humidity work against you like saboteurs. Bread molds fast. You pick off green spots, then yellow ones, then stare at crumbs wondering if bread has a soul. Potatoes last longer, but sprout white roots like alien fingers. One guy names them, claims they whisper at night. You're not sure he's joking. Canned food becomes friend and foe. Tinned meat tasting like rubber and smelling like dog food. You eat it anyway. Tinned cheese starts orange, ends gray. Then there are unlabeled tins, Russian roulette. Could be peaches, could be pork fat, could be both. You eat with one eye closed and a silent prayer. Meals rotate in shifts. No mess hall, just narrow passages and whatever flat surface you find. You balance your tin on knees or a torpedo edge, trying not to spill. Someone always spills. You share one spoon between 3 men. No one remembers whose turn it is. Eventually, you steal whatever utensil you can from the galley. The cook works in a closet-sized space surrounded by boiling pots, swaying walls, and a spice rack consisting of salt and despair. He performs miracles with powdered milk and dried onions. But even miracles taste bland after day 20. Once he serves fake liverwurst, mashed beans, butter, and mystery meat. You pretend to like it. He's the only thing standing between you and chewing leather straps. The worst part? You can't escape it. Galley smells, if you can call them that, permeate every corner. If someone burns porridge, the whole boat knows. If someone opens sardines, it's an international incident. One guy drops pickled herring. The smell lingers for days. You swear it's growing stronger. When morale plummets, the cook breaks out treats. Hard candy, chocolate bars, condensed milk hoarded like pirate treasure. You trade your last dry socks for one. You dream about them. Literally. Once you woke up crying because in your dream, you dropped chocolate into a bilge pump. But treats are rare. The norm is monotony. The same lukewarm gruel eaten with the same bent spoon in the same sweaty hallway. You choose slowly not to savor, but to convince your stomach this counts as food. Historians debate whether declining food quality affected morale and performance. Some say it caused combat fatigue. Others claim men adapted. Your proof? Adaptation is generous. You're not adapting. You're lowering standards. Then there's the water. You don't drink much. Can't. It's strictly rationed. Most goes to engines. What's left sits in tanks developing a metallic tang. Rust tea with algae notes. You sip slowly. Don't ask why it's sometimes yellow. Coffee. Occasionally. Bitter and thick like boiler scrapings. But it's hot. Keeps you awake. So you drink it and pretend it doesn't taste like regret. One sailor tries brewing tea using a sock as a strainer. It goes poorly. Another mixes powdered soup with marmalade, claiming it's a new beverage. You report him to the medic. And the flatulence. When 50 men eat the same fermented, gassy sludge daily, the boat becomes a brass section of bodily betrayal. At first it's funny, then tragic, then background noise. You start timing them for sport. Someone suggests a leaderboard. The cook wins hands down. Eventually you stop caring. You eat what you're given. Scrape mold off bread. Chew rubber meat. Drink yellow water. No alternatives. No escape. Just the countdown to surfacing and maybe tasting a fresh tomato. Until then, you swallow your standards along with the mystery stew. And if truly desperate, there's always Gunner the potato. He's looking plumper every day. It happens without warning. One moment you're picking lint from your soup while half listening to a crewmate's story about his cousin's accordion. The next, every light flashes red. A low, grating alarm howls through the hull. Someone shouts alarm. No translation needed. Depth charges. Suddenly you're scrambling to your station, sloshing through ankle-deep condensation, heart hammering like a depth-gauge needle. The U-boat plunges downward violently, too fast, too steep. You feel it in your bones. The sudden pressure shift makes your ears pop. The hull groans like a living thing. Valves hiss. Men shout coordinates. Boots pound on steel. A wrench clatters to the floor with deafening finality. And beneath it all, that terrible silence as you wait for the enemy to confirm they've got you. You want to pray but don't know who to. You whisper anyway. Then comes the first explosion. A distant whomp, muffled but unmistakable, like someone slapping the ocean with a giant hand. You flinch instinctively. Everyone does. Your stomach knots. You don't realize you're holding your breath until the sailor beside you exhales like he's just surfaced from drowning. The second blast hits closer. The entire hull shudders with a metallic scream that vibrates through your teeth. Rust flakes rain from the ceiling. A gauge glass cracks. Lights flicker ominously. You grip the console edge, trying not to look like you're about to vomit, unlike the cook, whose lunch now slides across the floor in a metal bowl. The third explosion is nearly direct. Not a hit, thank God, but close enough to slam everyone sideways. Something crashes in the engine room. Someone yells. You feel the shockwave in your molars. You scan the hull for leaks. Nothing yet, but that doesn't mean safety. Depth charges are simple devices. Explosive barrels set to detonate at specific depths. But when you're inside their target, simplicity doesn't matter. Each explosion is a question. Did they see us? Hear us? Will the next one crack our hull like an egg? Historians debate depth charge effectiveness. Some claim they were psychological weapons, terrifying but rarely fatal. Others insist they crippled the U-boat fleet. Down here, the debate feels academic. You're living the reality. Someone kills the engines. The boat goes silent. No machinery hum, no footsteps, just 50 men barely breathing. You become a dead fish drifting in the dark, hoping to disappear. Your ears strain for any clue from above. The fourth explosion feels like the ocean itself clapping its hands against your skull. The hull compresses with a thunderous tone. For one heart-stopping second, the lights dim. You think about the steel surrounding you, centimeters thick, and the crushing blackness beyond. Your depth gauge ticks past 180 meters. 190, 200. Maximum safe depth is around 220. After that, the hull becomes theoretical. Still the charges fall. You imagine what hull breach would feel like. Would water spray in? Or would the implosion be instant, like stepping on a tin can? The commander remains statue still at the periscope station, jaw clenched, back rigid. He doesn't speak, doesn't blink. You can almost hear calculations whirring behind his eyes. Speed, angle, depth, noise. You admire his calm, then notice his hand trembling slightly. Another detonation rocks the boat. You're past fear now. This is something colder. You glance around. One sailor mutters prayers. Another draws circles on his pants with a pencil stub. One guy stares into space with a faint smile, like he's watching some private comedy. Your jaw aches. You've been clenching it for 10 minutes straight. The air changes. You hadn't noticed before, but the longer you sit silent, the thicker it gets. CO superscript 2 levels rise. Each breath feels like inhaling cotton. Your head pounds. Someone vomits quietly in the corner. You close your eyes. Then, silence. No explosions. No sonar pings. Just the endless pressure of deep water. You wait. 1 minute. 2. 5. Nothing. The commander signals. Slowly, engines restart with a whine. The boat shudders, then eases forward, ascending slightly. Just enough to avoid scraping the seabed. Someone laughs. Not joy, but the ragged chuckle of someone who just escaped death only to return to canned peas and shared bunks. But it's a laugh. You made it. This time. Not all U-boats do. Some dive to escape and never surface. You think of those crews, trapped, crushed, erased by the deep. No last words. No graves. Just silence. There's a saying among the crew. The sea doesn't hate you. It just doesn't care. You're starting to believe it. You stretch stiff legs. Your hands still shake slightly. You drink rust-colored water that tastes like cough syrup. You're alive. Moving again. The commander orders a slight course change. just a few degrees. But everyone knows what it means. Avoid that patch of ocean. Too dangerous now. Too close. The cook, ever the optimist, starts preparing another meal. Something from a can, naturally. The tin opener's pop sounds almost cheerful. An older sailor claps your shoulder. Your first depth charge run, he says. You didn't scream. That's good. You nod, unsure whether to feel proud or disturbed. Then, as if it never happened, routine resumes. The boat hums. Men return to stations. The cabbage diesel stench returns like an old acquaintance. You crawl back into your still-warm bunk and lie there, pulse slowing, eyes open. But you don't forget. You can't. Because once you've sat in silence while the sea tries to crush you, you understand. U-boat life isn't just about surviving the ocean. It's about surviving the fear. It's day something. You've stopped counting. Time blurs in this metal womb. No sunlight. No clocks. Just endless cycles of sweaty sleep, grayish meals, and the engine's vibration thrumming through your bones. You don't need calendars anymore. You track time by smell. And right now, you smell like burnt oil, foot fungus, and someone's forgotten onion hoard. There's a saying on board. If you still care about hygiene, you're new. Judging by your crusty collar and armpits now classified as biological weapons, you're a veteran. You haven't showered. Of course not. Showers exist in legend, like unicorns or peace treaties. There's a tiny washroom near the engine room, but it hasn't worked since week 1. Instead, you practice field hygiene, wiping yourself down with a damp rag while praying nobody walks in. You've got 3 uniforms, one damp, one filthy, one being used as a pillow. You rotate them based on moisture level and stink tolerance. Socks are the real crisis. Trapped in rubber-soled boots 18 hours daily, your feet ferment. When you peel socks off at night, they make sounds no fabric should. Your boots are caked with engine grease. Fingernails black with oil. Your neck constantly itches like your skin wants to escape. One guy has a permanent underarm rash. Another's athlete's foot has been named and ranked. You attempted washing your face this morning. Managed 3 tablespoons of warm water before the pump died. Not heated. Everything here is warm. The air, the pipes, the floor. Even your spoon feels sun-warmed. Let's discuss that air. It's thick, wet, heavy, like breathing someone's exhale. CO superscript 2 levels climb hourly. Your lungs adjust, but your brain protests. Headaches, dizziness, constant fatigue. One sailor claims he hasn't taken a deep breath since Norway. Another says his dreams are foggy because his brain's on half oxygen. You'd laugh, but that requires energy. Engineers sometimes burn oxygen candles, chemical cakes releasing breathable air. And sulfur, so much sulfur. 1 minute you're grateful for fresh air, the next you're gagging on rotten egg fumes. The engine room is its own hell. Hot, loud, and swimming in oil. Diesel engines roar like angry gods when surfaced. Submerged, electric motors hum with bone-deep vibrations that set your teeth buzzing. If stationed here, you never stop sweating. Your shirt clings like a second skin. Face constantly slick. You drink lukewarm water by the cupful, yet remain parched. You've learned to navigate by touch. Which pipes burn? Which corners leak? Which hatches are safe to lean against? There's one spot behind the torpedo tubes that's always cool, prized real estate. When someone moves, another slides in like musical chairs with grease. Smell, heat, noise. They blend into constant pressure. You stop noticing until you surface. Then the hatch opens and night air rushes in. Cold, clean, soul-piercing. You climb halfway up the conning tower just to breathe, not caring about risk. 4-5 glorious minutes. The world smells like salt and starlight. But you can't stay. Radar pings. The commander orders a dive. You descend the ladder. The hatch slams shut. The pressure seals again. You swallow the memory of fresh air like a stolen sweet. Historians debate whether these conditions caused long-term health issues. Evidence shows respiratory damage, skin infections, psychological degradation from sensory overload. But no data was needed. The sailors lived it. You're living it now. A crewmate passes, face slick, smelling of onions and kerosene. He nods. You nod back. That's a full conversation here. The cook's boiling cabbage again. The stench wraps the boat like a wet blanket. You wonder what your house smells like. Soap? Coffee? Polished floors? You trade everything for one breath of clean hallway. Someone scrubs the battery compartment floor. Not because it helps. The grime returns instantly, but because the ritual makes them feel human. It's rebellion against decay. Then there are the leaks. First just drips, then streams. You patch them, ignore them, pretend the sea isn't pressing against the hull like a fist. One day, moisture beads on a pipe that shouldn't be wet. Everyone stares. Nobody speaks. Later, you all pass that pipe quietly, like tiptoeing past a sleeping bear. You haven't mentioned your rash. The medic's out of powder, rationing iodine. It can wait. Everything can. And yet, you function. You clean weapons. Monitor sonar. Stand watch. You joke about whose boots grow mushrooms. Draw smiley faces in grime. You survive. There's pride in that. Not heroism, just refusal to stop. You wake. You work. You stink. You sweat. And you continue. Somewhere above, moonlight glitters on waves. Stars wheel uncaring. But down here, you're part of a strange, stinking machine of men and metal. And somehow that's enough. Let's talk about the toilet. Or as the crew calls it, Das Porcelain der Verzweiflung. The Porcelain of Despair. This floating steel coffin contains exactly one toilet. And it's not discreetly tucked away in some private corner. Oh no, it's practically center stage in the forward compartment, mere awkward feet from where men eat, sleep, and pretend they're not breathing recycled farts. Privacy? Forget it. The flimsy metal door doesn't even latch properly. Everyone knows when you go. Everyone hears when you go. The contraption itself is a marvel of German over-engineering. Not just a toilet, a pressure-locked, valve-laden monstrosity that could double as a reactor core. When submerged, waste can't simply flush into the sea. It must be carefully pressurized, routed, and ejected without compromising stealth or, worse, inviting the Atlantic into your pants. Using this mechanical beast is an ordeal. First, you pump a valve to fill the bowl with seawater. Then you do your business while balancing on a narrow seat as the boat lurches like a drunk donkey. Then comes the 7-valve flushing sequence, exact order mandatory. Screw up, and the system backfires spectacularly. One poor soul once flipped valve 6 before valve 4. The result? A geyser of sewage and seawater that flooded the compartment, ruined the torpedo racks, and permanently killed everyone's appetite for tinned herring. The toilet was out of commission for 2 days. 2 days. 50 men. One emergency bucket system rigged in the engine room. The guilty engineer earned the nickname Captain Brownwater. It stuck. Even when functioning, the experience is miserable. The seat is perpetually damp. The metal feels cold when surfaced, weirdly warm when submerged. The tiny space reeks of 1,000 panicked flushes and failed disinfectant attempts. If the previous user rushed, you'll find evidence. You consider hovering. Then remember how unstable the boat is and take your chances. Also, there's no light. The bulb burned out weeks ago. Everything's done by feel, adding thrilling danger to a valve system that could turn you into a cautionary tale. Then there's the queue. During high alert periods after depth charge attacks, everyone suddenly needs to go. The line forms silently. Men clutching stomachs, shifting feet, pretending they're just passing through. One guy hums while waiting. Nobody finds it charming. And remember, this nightmare device sits just feet from the galley. So while someone's boiling greasy sausage, another's audibly battling the 7 valves of doom. The cook pretends not to hear. Always. It's an unspoken rule. We don't discuss smells during meals. Historians still argue whether the toilet malfunction that sank U-1206 was the war's most embarrassing maritime accident. A faulty head forced them to surface for repairs, right into Allied bombers. Some call it tragic. Others prove submarines are only as reliable as their plumbing. Either way, every recruit hears this story and immediately rethinks their water intake. Which brings us to rationing. To minimize trips to the cursed throne, sailors deliberately dehydrate. You sip just enough to avoid passing out. Consequences? Cramps, headaches, sluggish thoughts. One guy swore off liquids for 2 days, then collapsed in the engine room. He woke up babbling about lemon soda and died inside when offered cabbage water. You develop tricks. Pee during quiet shifts around 0300 when most sleep. Avoid canned beans. Steer clear of tinned peaches. Delicious going in, chaos coming out. And never follow the torpedo mechanic into the head. You'll need an hour before it's habitable again. Occasionally, when safely surfaced, the commander allows a bucket on deck. Exactly what it sounds like. A bucket. On deck. Under stars and crushing humility. You stand pants down, bracing against the railing, praying no rogue wave turns you into a nautical anecdote. One sailor actually preferred the bucket. Said it made him feel free, like the world hadn't swallowed him whole yet. You nodded slowly, backed away, and gave him the wide-eyed respect reserved for philosophers and madmen. Then there's accident etiquette. They happen. Sudden dives. Misfired valves. Bad can meet. You don't shame. You don't stare. You help clean if needed. Then never speak of it again. Ever. Still, the smell lingers. No amount of scrubbing, lemon peels, or cologne-soaked rags can erase what's seeped into these walls. The U-boat remembers every indignity. You start dreaming of real bathrooms. Running water. Doors that close. Toilet paper. You'd trade your boots for 5 minutes in a porcelain palace. Once, you spent an entire watch imagining a clean flushes echo in a tiled room. It brought tears. So you endure. You master the valve sequence. Bring your own rag. Time your visits perfectly. Wash hands with a splash of rust water. Wipe them on your pants. And return to pretending you're a hardened warrior, not a man desperately avoiding others' mistakes. Life aboard a U-boat demands this humility. It strips away dignity and replaces it with survival instincts. The toilet isn't just a toilet. It's a test, a rite of passage, a cold metal gate between you and whatever sanity remains. As you sit there, sweating, praying, flushing, you realize something profound. Even steel gods have bathrooms. Time moves differently in a U-boat. It doesn't tick or flow. It drips, like condensation from overhead pipes, accumulating without rhythm until the entire hull feels swollen with boredom. You sit. You wait. You sweat. You sigh. Then, just as your mind begins unraveling, something happens. A sonar ping. An engine pitch change. A periscope shadow. Adrenaline floods back, and everything else vanishes. Welcome to U-boat existence. Crushing boredom punctuated by raw terror. Let's start with the slow parts. There are hours, sometimes days, when nothing happens. Engines hum. Lights flicker. Water laps against the hull. You fight insanity by playing cards, rereading the same dog-eared novel 6 times, inventing new ways to stack bean tins. One guy narrates his actions in a 1930s radio voice. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we embark upon the thrilling voyage of sock rotation. You laugh the first 20 times. The crew gets creative. You carve soap figurines. Write unsent letters. Bet on when the toilet will explode next. A popular pastime is describing imaginary meals in vivid detail. First course, second course, wine pairings, dessert. Someone once described a pork roast so vividly the cook cried. Then there's music. Someone always has a harmonica. Or worse, an accordion. The sound bounces off metal walls in chaotic waves, comforting or maddening depending on the day. You tolerate it. Even grow fond of it, in a Stockholm Syndrome way. One poetry competition devolved into toilet limericks. Everything eventually does. The boredom warps your mind. You lose track of time. Was that depth charge run 3 days ago or last week? Morning? Afternoon? Thursday? Only meal rotations and watch changes mark time now. You live in 6-hour blocks. Anything beyond might as well be another lifetime. Historians debate whether monotony or combat was harder on U-boat crews. Some say the nothingness between attacks broke men faster than the attacks themselves. Others argue the real damage came from switching between extremes. One moment fixing a leaky valve, the next fighting for life under explosives. When action comes, it comes hard. It starts small. A sonar ping. The radio man stiffens. The commander leans in. Someone whispers coordinates. A shadow flickers in the periscope. a distant propeller, maybe a convoy. Everything changes. The crew moves with grim precision. No shouting, just practiced motions. Engines throttle down. The boat descends. You switch to whisper mode. Lights go red. Voices drop. Even your breath feels too loud. Tension hangs like fog. Every hull creak sounds like a scream. Every dial click echoes. You're hyper-aware of heartbeats. Sweat trails down your back. You grip your station with white knuckles and stare into darkness. Sometimes, nothing happens. The contact passes. You surface again. But sometimes, the hunt begins. You stalk the convoy. Track destroyers. Ready torpedoes. Get the order. Fewer free. Fire. Then hell breaks loose. Torpedo tubes hiss. The boat kicks back slightly. You count seconds. Listen. If lucky, you hear the distant boom of impact. Maybe more than one. A hit. A sinking. A kill. But celebration is brief. Because now they know you're here. Suddenly, you're the prey. Destroyers circle. Sonar buoys drop. Their pings echo through the hull. You dive deeper. Pressure mounts. Air thickens. You stop breathing when depth charges fall. Each explosion shakes the boat, rattles bones, reminds you how fragile this steel shell really is. This can last hours. You sit in silence, sweating, waiting, hoping. Then, nothing. Silence. You've escaped. Barely. And just like that, it's back to boredom. Back to stale air, greasy soup, the harmonica guy's 3-note repertoire. You'd think the excitement would feel good, a break from monotony. It doesn't. It exhausts, hollows you out. You return shaken, quiet, older around the eyes. Yet life resumes. You return to your post. Play cards. Someone carves a potato into a rabbit shape. You laugh at something stupid. Because what else can you do? There's a rhythm to it, however twisted. A little routine. A little terror. A little more routine. The dangerous days are when nothing happens too long. That's when minds wander. You imagine footsteps on the hull. Voices in pipes. One guy swore he heard music from the torpedo room. Another saw a face in the periscope, just floating there, watching. You don't believe him, but you check anyway. Between it all, you wait. For the next attack. The next order. The next depth charge. Or maybe, just maybe, the command to surface and go home. Until then, you count condensation drips. Mark watch changes. Wait for the harmonica to start again. And somehow, you continue. Because in this strange underwater world where silence and chaos dance in 6-hour cycles, survival means mastering both. You don't sleep aboard a U-boat. Not truly. You steal sleep. 30-minute fragments snatched between alarms and elbow jabs. One eye half open like a nervous cat. Calling it rest would be generous. It's more like losing consciousness while the boat shudders around you. Always one creak away from catastrophe. Your bunk is a narrow ledge offering just enough space to lie flat. If you don't move, breathe deeply, or mind your knees knocking against a pressure gauge. The mattress is a stained foam strip older than you are. Its discolored patches telling stories you don't want to hear. If you're lucky, it's only sweat. This pathetic rectangle gets shared with 2 other men in rotating shifts. Hot bunking, they call it. Though there's nothing warm about crawling into a space still damp from the last guy's back sweat. You don't ask questions. You curl into a human coma and hope your nightmares stay quiet tonight. Just as you drift off, someone inevitably slams a hatch, or coughs, or releases gas with torpedo-like force, or drops a wrench, or snores like a dying walrus. You learn to ignore it, eventually, because the alternative is madness. Even in rare, quiet moments, the U-boat never truly sleeps. It vibrates constantly, engines humming, pumps throbbing, electric motors whirring like distant thunderstorms. The mechanical noise reverberates through every pipe and bulkhead until you feel it in your teeth. Paradoxically, you grow to need this noise. When engines cut for silent running, your body panics. You lie awake, heart pounding, wondering if you've died or are about to. Watch rotations don't help. Life gets divided into 4-hour cycles, sometimes 6. No sunrise or sunset to orient you. Just alarms, shuffling footsteps, and the occasional grunted "you're up." Your circadian rhythm abandons ship within days. Your dreams, when they come, are strange, fragmented, metallic. You dream in steel and pressure and fog. One night you're trapped inside a torpedo tube. Another, the walls close in like a vice. You wake with nails dug into the mattress, jaw clenched so tight your teeth ache. Sleep deprivation creeps in quietly. You forget names. Put boots on wrong feet. One guy tried lighting a match underwater during drills. Another spent a full minute explaining engine repairs to a pressure valve. You laughed, then cried, then laughed again. Welcome to week 3. Some sailors swear by micronaps, 10-minute power downs between alarms. Others collapse wherever they can. You once found a crewman curled under canned beets in storage, claiming it was the quietest spot on board. You didn't argue. Then there's the sweating. You sweat in your sleep. The air's so humid, the bunks feel like they're crying. You wake drenched, skin sticky, blanket kicked halfway off. The compartment smells like stale breath and mildew. You'd murder for a dry pillow. One attempt sleeping with a towel wrapped around your head resulted in spontaneous mold growth. The nightmares are their own special torment. You're in a metal coffin beneath hundreds of feet of seawater, hunted by destroyers, cut off from the world. Your brain responds accordingly. Dreams of flooding compartments, hatches that won't open, drowning. You jerk awake and smack your head on the upper bunk. Again, there's always that one guy who talks in his sleep. At first it's mumbling, then full conversations. Once, he sang an entire folk song in Latin. No one knew if it was real or hallucination. You applauded anyway. Sleepwalking happens too. One sailor tried exiting through a torpedo tube mid-dream. Thankfully, someone stopped him before he turned the forward compartment into an aquarium. Historians debate whether U-boat crews suffered long-term psychological damage from chronic sleep deprivation. Post-war interviews suggest yes, especially those on extended patrols. Many veterans described lifelong insomnia. Others said they never felt truly rested again. But you're not thinking about post-war. You're counting hours until your next bunk rotation, wondering if the last guy drooled on the pillow, listening to that faint dripping sound, leak or imagination. Sometimes, as you finally drift off, the boat lurches. Maybe a course correction, maybe currents, maybe death approaching. You don't ask. You sigh, roll over, and try again. You develop coping tricks. Wax and cotton earplugs. A rag over your eyes. Imagining rain sounds. One man swore by sleeping with a potato under his neck for support. Another sang lullabies to himself, off-key but heartfelt. Eventually, you gain a sixth sense, waking instantly when shouted for, falling back asleep within 30 seconds if the crisis passes. It's not rest. It's survival. Officers fare slightly better. Private bunks. Maybe a reading lamp. But they sleep less. The weight of command keeps them awake. You once caught the commander asleep, standing at the periscope, one hand still gripping the handles. No one mentioned it. You grow accustomed to dreams that vanish upon waking. To sleep so light it barely counts. To waking unsure what day it is. Then comes a miracle. 5 uninterrupted hours of sleep during a calm stretch. You wake disoriented, heart racing, convinced something's wrong. Nothing is. You simply slept. Then the alarm screams again. Back to reality. Back to the exhausting cycle. You pull on damp clothes. Splash rust-colored water on your face. Yawn, stretch, and duck to avoid that damned overhead pipe. And you continue. Because sleep on a U-boat isn't about rest. It's about surviving until tomorrow. It starts as a whisper in your chest, a flutter, a twinge, a creeping panic you refuse to name. You try ignoring it. After all, you've endured the smells, the toilet, the sleepless nights. But now the walls feel closer, the air thicker. That whisper becomes a shout. Get out. Claustrophobia. Even the word feels too large for this cramped space. It was always there, lurking beneath the surface. But after weeks underwater, it takes shape. You look down the narrow corridor and realize there's nowhere to go. Not one spot in this entire steel tube where you can stand straight, stretch your arms, or breathe deeply without brushing against metal or another human. You crouch to tie your boots and bang your head on a valve. Again, turn too quickly and elbow a pipe. Again, Duck into your bunk to find someone's socks dangling directly above your face. Again, the steel walls press from all sides like the boat is inhaling while you try to exhale. Condensation covers everything. It drips from ceilings, puddles on floors, slicks every handrail. You start imagining the U-boat as a living creature, sweaty, damp, utterly indifferent to your suffering. It doesn't care if you panic, doesn't care if you scream. At first, you resist. You distract yourself, count rivets, recite poems, trace map routes in your head. One guy presses his forehead against the bulkhead humming. Another taps a spoon rhythmically against pipes like a heartbeat. You try it. Helps for a minute. Then comes the hull's groan. Metal stretching as the boat dives deeper. Normal pressure, they say, but to your ears, it sounds like bones breaking. You glance around wondering, if something fails, how long would we have? Seconds? Less. You picture it. The pressure, the cold, the silence. You shake your head. Breathe. Focus. The command room feels worse. So many dials. So many voices. So many hands reaching across each other for controls. You squeeze behind the periscope and bump the sonar operator. He just gives you a tired look. You mutter an apology and wish you could evaporate. Sleep offers no escape either. Your bunk is a coffin. You lie 6 inches from the ceiling, feet jammed against the wall. Try shifting and knock into boots hanging above. Try not to imagine the ocean just beyond those few centimeters of steel. Try not to think about the depth gauge ticking upward. You try. Sometimes you fail. There's always one who cracks first. It starts small. He grows quiet, withdrawn, then comes pacing back and forth in narrow aisles like a caged animal, then muttering, then shaking. One night, he wakes screaming about walls closing in. The medic gives diluted morphine and orders rest. But rest doesn't help. He gets reassigned to constant cleaning duty, scrubbing the same patch of deck over and over, whispering to the mop. You walk by and pretend not to notice. Historians debate how widespread claustrophobia was among U-boat crews. Official reports downplayed it, German stoicism and all that. But memoirs tell another story. Men confessing they felt like trapped animals, begging for transfers, saying they'd rather face bullets than spend another hour in this steel belly. You understand now. You stand in the torpedo room attempting to stretch. Shoulders hit pipes. Elbows knock tools. You want to scream. Instead, you yawn and pretend everything's fine. The act almost convinces you, but the cracks keep forming. You wake sweating, not just from heat, but nightmares. Dreams of being locked in shrinking boxes, of the boat sinking while crewmates smile calmly. You don't tell anyone. Of course not. You joke, play cards, tell hometown stories, ask dumb questions like, what if you sneeze during a dive? Just to hear laughter, just to break the silence. Some develop rituals against the panic, wearing lucky socks every Tuesday, knocking twice before entering compartments. You carry a pebble from your hometown beach, rubbing it when anxiety spikes. It's smooth now, worn down, almost gone. One afternoon, you volunteer for galley duty just to escape your usual post. Chop onions until your eyes burn. Scrub pots that haven't been cleaned since 1939. The cook barely notices, too busy cursing a broken valve. But you're grateful. For 5 hours, you don't think about walls, or air, or the weight above. But it always returns. Back to your bunk, ducking your head, sliding in, closing your eyes. And there it is, the pressure. The walls closing in. You tell yourself it's nothing. Just nerves. Just fatigue. You believe it. Until next time. And the next. The worst part isn't the fear itself. It's the shame. Because you're supposed to be strong. Silent. Unshakable. A wolf of the sea. Not some panicked animal fighting tears in a mildew-scented bunk. But fear doesn't care about reputation. Neither does the boat. So you find ways to cope. Tiny victories. Deep breaths. Staring at the one dry patch of ceiling. Writing mental letters to people you miss. Listening to snoring and pretending it's ocean waves. And you endure. Because there's no way out until missions end. No doors to open. No windows to escape through. Just steel. Sweat. The steady thump of your own heartbeat. And somehow, against all logic, you continue. Because down here in this creaking pressure chamber, survival means making peace with the panic, learning to breathe even when the boat seems to breathe back. The orders come shouted before your boots hit the floor. You're mid-dream about home when someone bangs the pipe above your bunk. All stations. Emergency drill, flooding aft. You're up, smacking your head, grabbing your jacket, sweating already. Even though it's just a drill, your heart hasn't gotten the memo. The response is frantic yet precise. Every man knows his role. No hesitation, in theory or practice. Someone slams a watertight hatch. Another spins a valve until his knuckles bleed. You wedge into position, cranking the manual pump with both arms while your feet slide on condensation. Lights flicker. The air turns thick. For one breathless second, you wonder if this is really a drill. Then the siren stops. The commander gives all clear. You exhale. Barely. This is U-boat discipline. Tight, ruthless, forged in fear and hardened by routine. When disaster strikes, and it will, there's no time for debate. Only action. And action comes from one thing. Discipline drilled so deep it overrides panic. Even small mistakes here kill. Like forgetting to secure a hatch. Like opening the wrong valve. Like botching the toilet's flushing sequence and flooding the head. Some stories become legend. A new recruit once leaned on the wrong switch in the battery room. Just leaned. The power surge knocked out half the lighting and started a small fire. No one was hurt, but he got reassigned to permanent potato peeling duty and banned from the batteries for life. That's the discipline this boat breeds. Not shouted, not barked, learned. Through repetition, embarrassment, and the quiet knowledge that everyone's watching and depending on you. No room for ego. No time for pride. Screw up, you own it. Someone else screws up, you fix it. Fast, quiet, then move on. The commander enforces this with eerie calm. He rarely raises his voice. Doesn't need to. His stare makes men reconsider their life choices. When he speaks, short, clipped orders never exceeding 5 words. You listen like your lungs depend on it. Sometimes they do. Punishment, when needed, is swift and private. A sharp word. Reassignment. Extra duty. No yelling. No punches. The real sting is knowing you endangered your crew. Became a liability. That's what no one wants. But beneath this rigid surface lies something else. Trust. You know the guy beside you will do his job. He'll secure the hatch behind you. Flip the right switch even in darkness. Not panic when the boat dives steeply. You've practiced drills until they're muscle memory. Fire. Flooding. Hull breach. Battery gas leak. Depth charges. Every man knows these sequences better than his own bunk. You could run them half asleep. You have. Here's the paradox of U-boat life. Chaos surrounds you. Pressure, hunger, fear. But inside, there's order. A tightrope of procedures between disaster and survival. Everyone's balancing. Yet tension builds. Because not every emergency is a drill. And when real danger comes, the choices aren't clean. You hear the whisper first. Compartment 5's flooding. Someone checks. Confirms. A slow leak from a pipe seal damaged during the last dive. Everyone knows what this means. The commander does mental math. Stone-faced. Then gives the order to seal the compartment. But there's a problem. A man still inside. Unconscious. Slipped during the dive. Hit his head. Now lying in 6 inches of water, maybe worse. Someone volunteers to go in. The medic. The commander says no. Not enough time. Not enough margin. The hatch seals. You hear the will spin shut. No one speaks. Not even the cook. That's discipline too. The kind that tears something from you. No one mentions it afterward. The man's name disappears. His bunk gets cleared. His socks folded. Someone makes a bad joke about him being dry for once. No one laughs. But the mission continues. Because it must. Historians debate how often these choices happened. Official records are vague. Crew diaries sparse, especially about dark moments. But the silence speaks louder than words. You wonder if the commander feels it. If he lies awake remembering faces of those he couldn't save. Or if he's trained himself not to think at all. You don't know which is worse. One night, you're ordered to torpedo a merchant ship. Easy target. No escort. Barely moving. The torpedoes hit. The ship sinks fast. Through the periscope, you see men in water. Floating. Calling. Trying. One sailor begs to surface and throw them a raft. The commander says no. Standard procedure. Too risky. You dive. Leave them behind. Back to silence. Back to routine. Discipline. You wonder what this makes you. Following such orders without hesitation. Is that strength? Or something else? No answers here. Not underwater. So you focus on what you can control. You clean your station. Polish your boots. Memorize escape hatches you'll never use. You turn fear into focus. Panic into precision. Because the boat demands it. Because the moment you slip, someone else might pay. So you get sharper, quieter, colder. And every time the siren wails or pressure drops or sonar pings, you move. Not from bravery, from training, from drilling. Because aboard a U-boat, the difference between discipline and disaster is measured in seconds. Your mid-card game when the call comes. Contact bearing 045. Distance unknown. At first, just the sonar operator's head lifting. Listening. You freeze, king of hearts in hand. Then the commander checks the log and nods. Everything changes. Surface. Slow speed. Prepare torpedoes. Just like that, routine vanishes. This steamy tin can transforms into a predator. Every man knows his part. No shouting. Just movement. Controlled. Precise. Hatches secure. Lights shift red. The control room buzzes as dials adjust and maps unfurl across the plotting table. You've practiced this. Dreamed it. Now it's real. A target. And maybe your moment. You edge toward the periscope. Not allowed to look, but curiosity leans. The commander takes a quick scan. Then a longer one. The crew holds breath. Freighter. No escort. Slow. Broadside. Perfect. This is what the boat was built for. Not just floating underwater, but hunting. Every valve, every bunk, every indignity, all narrow to this moment. You're the wolf. The freighter's the sheep. The commander calls for a firing solution. Numbers flow, angle, range, bearing, speed. You don't understand them all, but the tone's clear. You're about to shoot. Your heartbeat thrums in your throat. The crew's calm, focused, strangely quiet before a kill. No jokes, no coughs, just instrument clicks, uniform rustles, tensions hush. Los, fire. The torpedo launches with a metallic shump. The boat jerks slightly. You count. 1, 2, 3. Each second stretches. Then boom. Distant but unmistakable. A hit. Gasps. A stifled cheer cut short by the commander's glance. Not yet. Another boom. The freighter's gone dark in the periscope. Listing. Sinking. It worked. Some men grin. Others exhale like they'd been underwater too. The commander watches longer, then nods. Good. Dive. Full silent. Because now they know you're here. The destroyers will come. You've done your job. Now pay the price. As you descend, the triumph drains. Back into darkness. Back into tension. Back into silence, so thick it feels like wool in your ears. Sonar ping starts soon. Regular. Methodical. The sound of hunters searching. You lie in your bunk, fully dressed, boots on, ears tuned like radios. The destroyers take their time. They circle. Sweep. Wait. You do the same. For hours. You whisper thoughts into your chest. Study bolts overhead, wondering how many more hits this hull can take. Someone fingers a charm from home. Another scribbles in a notebook with shaking hands. Then the charges begin. Womp. Far away. You still flinch. Womp. Womp. Closer now. The boat rattles like a tin can. Dust rains down. A gauge pops loose, clattering. Everyone stares like it might explode. You wonder if they've got your exact depth. Wonder if your last meal will be canned ham and regret. Historians debate whether Allied tech had surpassed U-boat stealth by mid-1943. Some say Germans still had advantages in certain waters. Others argue the Allies had begun the slow choke, turning each patrol into suicide roulette. Down here, you don't care who's winning. You care about surviving the next 5 minutes. The commander orders a deeper dive. You pass 200 meters. The hull groans like an old man. Somewhere in the galley, a spoon falls. No one moves to get it. The destroyers keep circling. Their propellers echo through the hull like giants stomping overhead. Occasional explosions rock the boat, each one closer. You check for leaks. Just sweat. Then, silence. No pings. No depth charges. You wait. And wait. Finally, the commander signals. Rise 10 meters. Slowly. Just enough to listen. No sounds. No ships. Gone. For now. The crew starts breathing again. Some sit heavily. Some laugh too loud at nothing. The cook, on cue, begins warming canned stew. You eat it with shaky hands. It tastes like victory and vinegar. You return to your bunk. The mattress is damp. Still warm from the last guy. You don't care. You curl up, face the wall, let your pulse slow. Then it hits you. You sank a ship. You killed men. You didn't see their faces or hear their voices, but they were there. Maybe on deck. Maybe asleep. Maybe writing letters home like you did 2 days ago. It's war, you tell yourself. Them or us. But part of you wonders. Above, the ocean churns over the freighter's grave. Debris floats. An oil slick spreads like blood. Somewhere, maybe, survivors cling to wreckage. Maybe they'll be rescued. Maybe not. You'll never know. And strangely, you don't want to. You have your own sea to survive. Your own steel world to manage. No room for ghosts. But they'll come anyway. Later, when quiet. When you're alone in the head, staring at rust in the bowl. When you close your eyes and hear, not sonar or engines, but voices. Shouting. Crying. You won't speak of it. No one does. You'll joke. Complain about soup. Clean your boots. And continue. Because you must. Because the next convoy's out there. And this miserable, stinking, sweating machine of torpedoes and tension wasn't built for mercy. It was built for hunting. And you're not done yet. You're staring at the bulkhead. Not for any reason. Just because your eyes need somewhere to rest. And the condensation trails forming patterns on the metal give the illusion of something to focus on. You've been at this long enough to forget what you were thinking about before you started. The droplets crawl downward like sluggish mercury. Their paths dictated by some physics you don't understand. It's hard to tell if the moisture comes from the boat crying. Or you. Time does that here. It stretches until it snaps. Bends until the edges blur. You wake up unsure if it's morning or some arbitrary hour that stopped matching weeks ago. The watch rotations continue. The meals repeat. The faces around you become moving shadows with names attached. You start forgetting simple things. Did you already eat? Did you clean your station? Is this the 3rd dive today or the 5th? It's not just memory that fades. It's reality itself. Long patrols erode your grip on what's real. No sunlight. No fresh air. No space to think or breathe or remember that the world isn't just oil and mildew and sweat. You begin to feel untethered, like you're drifting through something that almost resembles life, but isn't quite. The others feel it too. You see it in their eyes. The guy across from you in the galley chews a biscuit while staring through it, one hand trembling slightly, though he doesn't seem to notice. Another sailor, once loud and chatty, hasn't spoken in 2 days. He just sits in the torpedo room, tapping the same wrench against the bulkhead in a rhythm only he understands. Some get creative with their madness. The cook now talks to his tins of beef like old friends. He's named one Dieter. Dieter the beef tin gets a respectful nod every morning. You joke about it. Everyone laughs too hard. The sound stretched thin over something fragile. One man writes poetry on scraps of old duty logs. Nothing grand. Just fragments about the sea, about home, about sunlight remembered. He recites them when he thinks no one's listening. You listen anyway. It helps. Some nights, you hear whispers that don't come from people, from the boat itself. Pipes creaking in languages you almost understand. Valves hissing secrets. The steel groaning in long, aching notes that sound almost like words. Sometimes it mimics footsteps above, even though you're hundreds of feet underwater. Sometimes like knocking on a hatch that shouldn't be touched. You sit bolt upright once, heart hammering, certain someone just called your name. No one did. Or if they did, they're gone now. You start seeing things. Not hallucinations exactly. More like flickers. Shapes at the edge of vision that shouldn't be there. A shadow that moves wrong. A reflection in polished metal that doesn't match reality. You tell yourself it's fatigue. Bad air. The boat playing tricks. Maybe it is. Maybe it's always been this way. Historians debate whether U-boat crews experienced group hallucinations during the war's later years. Some reports mention shared visions, odd behaviors, collective confusion. Others dismiss it as stress or exaggeration. But you know the truth in your bones. This place warps minds like a funhouse mirror bends light. You catch yourself doing strange things without realizing. Counting rivets obsessively, chewing your spoon's end, sleeping fully clothed, boots on, because the thought of being unprepared, even for 5 minutes, makes your skin crawl. And the dreams. God, the dreams. At first they're normal. Home, food, laughter. Then they twist. The boat's always sinking in them now, or upside down, or filled with water no one else notices. You try to scream, but can't. Try to run, but have nowhere to go. You wake drenched, heart racing, clutching the wall like it's the only anchor in a storm. And still, the days march on. You forget what your own voice sounds like when not whispering. Forget what trees look like. Forget the feeling of standing in a room without touching something on all sides. One sailor starts asking disturbing questions. Do you think we're still at sea? You blink. What? I mean, how do we know? What if we sank days ago, and this is just... He trails off. You look at him, and for one terrifying second, you believe him. You shake it off. You have to. You wash your face with rust-colored water. Lace your boots. Report for duty. Do what's asked. Try not to stare at any one thing too long. That's when the boat gets inside you. There are moments of clarity, though, when the hatch opens and a breeze rushes in like a pardon. When a letter from home gets passed around, its creased paper more precious than gold. When someone finds an old candy tucked in a jacket lining and shares it like sacramental wine. You each take one lick, just one. It's lemon. You close your eyes and remember summer. These moments ground you. You live for them. You also live for rumors. Whispers about extended shore leave. Talk that the war's turning, that the Allies are being pushed back. You nod along. Don't believe it, but it doesn't matter. It's something to hold on to when the walls feel too close. You've stopped measuring time in hours. Now it's dives, depth charge attacks, sock rotations. You name days after meals, mushy peas day, burnt sausage day, the day of the floating bread incident. It's funny, until it's not. One sailor finally breaks. Middle of the night. Stands up screaming that the walls are shrinking, that the boat's folding inward. He pounds the hatch with his fists, tries to climb the ladder. They pull him down, hold him, whisper to him until he stops fighting. He doesn't return to his bunk. They move him to storage, give him sedatives. The medic watches from a stool outside the hatch, silent. Next morning, everyone pretends nothing happened. That's how you survive. You don't talk about the cracks. You keep your head down. Eat your canned meat. Laugh at the cook's imaginary beef tin friend. And wait, because you know, sooner or later, the mission will end. The boat will surface. The hatch will open. You'll step into sunlight. And then, maybe, you'll remember how to breathe again. Until then, you grip the nearest handrail, swallow the fear rising like bile, and repeat the one truth everyone here understands. We're still down here. And it's not just the ocean we're fighting. It's ourselves. Every now and then comes the order. Surface. The word rolls through the boat like a shockwave. You hear it in whispers, see it in the sudden straightening of slumped shoulders, feel it in the collective intake of breath, as if even the U-boat itself pauses to listen. After so long in the dark, you've almost forgotten what the word means. But you remember how it feels. Like hope. Like air. You're at periscope depth. Rising slowly. The hull complains, but its groans are familiar now. You glance around, trying not to grin. No one speaks, but you can tell. Everyone's waiting. Then, clunk. The hatch turns. The first man climbs, shoulders scraping the narrow passage, boots thudding on rungs. You follow close, heart pounding. And then, suddenly, there it is. The night sky. Black velvet studded with stars, so sharp they look like holes punched in fabric. Cold air washes over your skin. The contrast shocking after weeks of stale warmth. You gasp like a drowning man breaking surface. This is the surfacing ritual. It never lasts long. 15 minutes. Maybe 20 if the sea's calm and radar clear. But those minutes are everything. You close your eyes and tilt your face to the wind. Listen to silence that isn't really silence. Waves lapping, hull creaking, the occasional seabird's cry. No machinery groans. No filters wheezing. No dripping valves. Just water and wind and space. It's enough to make grown men cry. Sometimes someone does. Quietly. No one mentions it. The commander stands in the conning tower, scanning the horizon. His silhouette is sharp against the stars. He rarely speaks up here. Just watches. In this light, he looks different. Human. Almost tired. You forget sometimes that he's down there with you, breathing the same foul air. The crew takes fresh air in shifts, 2 or 3 at a time. You stand on the narrow deck, arms crossed against the cold, fingers numb within seconds. You don't care. You'd stand there barefoot if ordered. Someone smuggled a chocolate bar topside. You pass it around. It's slightly melted. Still perfect. You look at your crewmates and realize they're smiling. Really smiling. The kid from Munich even laughs. A real laugh that echoes across the water and reminds you you're still alive. Then someone lights a cigarette. Against regulations, technically. But no one stops him up here. The smoke curls into the air like incense in a cathedral. You don't smoke, but you take a puff anyway. Just to taste something that isn't canned meat or battery acid. It burns your throat. You love it. These surface runs grow rarer now. Enemy planes scour the skies. Radar everywhere. Every surfacing's a risk. But sometimes it's worth it. Not just for air, but for the ritual. The sanity check. The proof the world above still exists. Some nights, the sea lies flat as glass. You swear you can see your reflection. Other nights, it's rough, wind-whipping spray that stings your face. You stand there anyway, gripping the rail with both hands, soaked and grinning like an idiot. Because down there in the metal beast, you're a ghost. A whisper, a shadow moving through the deep. But up here under the stars, you remember, you're a man. There are rules, even in this ritual. No shouting, no singing, no jokes loud enough to carry. You're always at risk. Planes could be listening, destroyers lurking nearby. But within that quiet, you share something unspoken, a moment of humanity between men who've spent too long pretending to be machines. Then, too soon, the call comes, prepare to dive. Like waking from a dream. You stub out the cigarette. Take one last gulp of air as if it might need to last a week. Glance up at the stars, trying to memorize their patterns. You tell yourself you'll remember. You never do. Back down the ladder. Back into the dark. Back into the stink and sweat and the sound of the boat breathing around you. But something's changed. Just slightly. You can still taste the salt on your lips. Still feel the sky in your lungs. Some sailors keep pieces of the surface world. A button lost on deck. A seashell caught in boot treads. One guy carries an empty bottle that once held seawater in his breast pocket. Says it helps him sleep. Another draws stars on his bunk wall in pencil. Crude, wobbly things. Orion, the Big Dipper. He adds one each time they surface. His own celestial map etched into steel. Historians speculate about the psychological value of these surface rituals. Not just for air, but morale. A vital pressure release. Some captains scheduled them strategically, after depth charge attacks, after long silent runs, after failed torpedo strikes. A reminder that life exists beyond the hull. You believe it. You need to believe it. Because the ocean is vast, endless. And the U-boat? It's a coffin with propellers. But the stars remind you of something bigger. Of silence that isn't dangerous. Of darkness that doesn't press inward. Of a world that still turns. Even while you're submerged. You think of home during those minutes on deck. Not always the people, but the place. A window. A street lamp. Birds singing. Warm bread in a paper bag. A bicycle rattling over cobblestones. Things you haven't seen in months, but suddenly remember with painful clarity. And when you dive again, you carry that memory like a talisman. You close your eyes in your bunk and feel the wind on your face. Hear waves in the hull's creaks. Taste salt in your canned soup. It's not enough, but it's something. Something to hold on to when the walls feel too close. Something to remind you this won't last forever. That someday, the hatch will open, and you won't have to go back down. Someday, the stars will mean you're free. But not yet. Not tonight. Tonight, you're submerged again, running silent, a shadow beneath the waves. The odds are against you. You've always known this, deep down. From the moment you first stepped aboard, helmet asked you, socks already damp, you felt it. Not superstition, not fear, just quiet certainty that most who wear this uniform don't get to take it off on land. Now it's undeniable. You're in the control room, studying the chart table. The lines drawn there aren't routes, they're guesses. Desperate stabs at avoiding new allied sonar nets. The pattern's clear, fewer return paths. More last contact markers. Boats that left port and never checked in. You knew some of those crews. Trained together. Shared jokes. Lent someone a knife. Heard another sing off-key in Kiel's showers. Gone. The German U-boat fleet is dying. The enemy's gotten better. Faster. Smarter. Radar from above, sonar from below. Escort ships, hunter-killer groups. They don't just chase now, they hunt. And they're very good at it. There's no hiding from this truth. You felt it. The tighter circles. The louder pings. The depth charges that no longer miss by comforting margins, but land close enough to buckle steel. Your last patrol was the worst yet. 6 destroyers. 6. Like wolves around wounded prey. You evaded for hours. Dove to 240 meters. The hull groaned like a dying beast. Men prayed. One vomited blood from the pressure. Another passed out clutching a rosary. You were certain it was the end. But it wasn't. Not that time. You surfaced under cover of darkness, limped away silent and dripping oil and seawater. No one spoke afterward. What was there to say? You're part of a shrinking brotherhood now. Each time you dock, fewer faces greet you. The officers are graver. The ceremonies feel hollow, like everyone's pretending nothing's wrong. But you know, U-boats once ruled the Atlantic. Scattered convoys, brought empires to their knees. Now, you're prey, a relic of fading tactics. And yet, you go out again. Because that's the job. You tell yourself it's for the fatherland. Your family, honor. But mostly, there's no other choice. This is your world now. The only one that makes sense. The boat, the crew, the deep. No glory here. No parades. No trumpets. Succeed, and no one knows your name. Fail, and they'll never find your grave. Just cold water. Just pressure. Just silence. One sailor joked that U-boat service was the only job where promotion meant not dying. You all laughed too hard. The kind of laughter that's one step from screaming. You know the statistics. Everyone does. They whisper them like curses. By late war, nearly 80% of U-boat crews don't return. 8-0. Higher than infantry. Higher than bomber pilots. You're not just expendable, you're pre-written off. And yet, when orders come, you board again. The engines hum. The hatch seals. The world shrinks, grows heavier, darker. One more mission. One more maybe. One more gamble against the odds. You no longer pretend you're invincible, but you do pretend you're ready. Every time. Because the truth? You're not afraid of dying at sea. You're afraid of being forgotten by it. Of sinking so deep, not even memory reaches you. Of becoming just another X on a chart. So you scrub rust from your bunk. Check pressure valves twice. Polish your boots like someone might see them. Joke with the cook. Nod to the commander. Breathe the stench and pretend it's normal. You live like a ghost waiting to happen. But you still live. Even when the odds say you shouldn't. Even when the water gets closer every day. Even when the last light fades and the world becomes nothing but depth and steel and doubt. You keep going. Because that's what men do when there's no way out. Because the U-boat is your home now. And home, however cruel, is still home. And now, as the engines fade to a distant hum and you curl in your bunk, eyes half closed, the ocean's rhythm gently rocking the boat beneath you, the air is warm again. The lights have dimmed. The others murmur softly, boots tucked away, breaths slow and even. You trace the same bolt on the ceiling you've stared at 100 times, watching condensation bead, form, and drop. Again and again. Steady. Predictable. Like the sea. Like the mission. Maybe tomorrow you surface. Maybe not. But for now, the crisis is past. The drill's done. The torpedo's silent. The hull, for once, isn't groaning. Just the occasional creak of pressure shifting. the tap of someone rolling over, the distant gurgle of water against steel. And for a few precious minutes, the walls don't feel quite so close. You exhale slowly, letting your mind drift. Not to home, not to danger, not even to those lost along the way. Just to the quiet, to the rhythm, to the gentle, endless sway of a world beneath the waves. It's still dark, still cramped, still damp. But in this moment, in this lull, in this tiny humming corner of the deep, you're safe. You're still here. And maybe, just maybe, you'll make it back.